Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Get early access to Sleep Number's biggest sale of the year. 25% off the i8 bed, our most popular. Plus free home delivery. Limited time. All Sleep Number smart beds offer temperature solutions for your best sleep. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames. And this is
A Little Bit Culty.
Cults are commonplace now. From fandoms to fads, we're examining them all. We look at what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real culty stories told directly by the people who lived through them, because we want you to learn a few things that we've had to learn the hard way.
For example, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you might be prime recruitment material, and who knows, you could already be in a cult. If you're not aware of your programming, you're probably being programmed, so keep listening to find out.
We'll talk about all sorts of topics on the show, but be aware, this podcast might contain stories that could be alarming to some of our listeners, so please check our show notes for more detailed descriptions and take care of yourself.
Subscribe to our Patreon for Thursday bonus episodes, Q&A, and all sorts of exclusive content. That's patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Welcome to Season 7 of A Little Bit Culty.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to my love.
Welcome back to A Little Bit Culty, everyone.
Sarah and Nippy here again, ready to unpack another story of resilience and recovery with someone who's been down that road of surviving high control environments and came out stronger.
That's right. Today, we're thrilled to have Katherine Spearing with us for a second time. She's a certified trauma recovery practitioner, the founder of Tears of Eden, a nonprofit supporting survivors of spiritual abuse, and the former host of the Uncertain podcast, which broke ground on conversations about religious trauma.
Kat's also an author, an improv theater performer, and a fierce advocate for the power of art in healing. Her upcoming book, 1,000 Tiny Paper Cuts, The Subtle, Insidious Nature of Spiritual Abuse and Life on the Other Side, is set to drop in October, and it's all about navigating the aftermath of spiritual abuse and finding a path to thriving.
We're diving deep today into what spiritual abuse looks like, how it ties to things like purity culture and the Christian Patriarchy Movement, and why art can be a game changer in recovery. Kat, welcome to the show.
Kat Spearing, welcome back to A Little Bit Culty.
Hello. Excited to be back.
Yeah.
So
How have you
excited.
been since you were here last time?
Doubling down.
So many things happening since last time. I know
Yeah,
it was
you've been a
only a
busy
year ago,
bee.
but it feels like 5 years ago.
Was it
But
a
then
year ago?
Also, just like yesterday. So excited to be back with y'all.
Yes.
I don't know that I've done a podcast redo. This might be my first second
Well,
appearance.
tell our audience why we're having you back.
Yeah, so I have a book coming out in October called 1,000 Tiny Paper Cuts, The Subtle, Insidious Nature of Spiritual Abuse. And it definitely touches on coercive control and all of the cult dynamics and all of the things. So that's coming out in October. Very exciting and
Congrats.
just kind of building on all of the stuff that came before.
Okay, for those of you who did not hear Kat's first episode, and we highly recommend it, we'll include that in the show notes. Give us a little summary of your upbringing as a stay-at-home daughter. And is this the proper term, the patriarchy movement?
Christian Patriarchy Movement, yes. Because I think the patriarchy movement is universal. So this is specifically the Christian patriarchy movement in which God and the Bible are used to reinforce male power in both the church and the family. And it's a very extreme version. And one of the things that I talk about in my book is the connection between the Christian Patriarchy Movement that I grew up in, which was a very extreme version of patriarchy, and the connection to the patriarchy that is in the patriarchal system that is in the evangelical church that people don't want to talk about. Yeah, so the Christian Patriarchy Movement, one of the highlights of it is just women are not really allowed to pursue education, pursue careers. You're basically in an incubator being trained to be a wife and a mom and raise your kids and support your husband's vision. So that's like the main hallmark. There are a lot of other things, but that's one of the main hallmarks of it and what I grew up in, and did college in secret and eventually had to leave just kind of under the cover of darkness because there just wasn't a way forward by staying in there. And I was living in my parents' home until I turned 26. And then left, loaded my little Toyota Solera and left.
That's a good summary, and we'll revert people back to the original for the whole thing. But how did this high control environment shape your early life, and what parallels do you see with other cult-like structures that we've been discussing on the podcast?
Right. Well, I'm sure you are aware, and your audience is aware, cult leaders and cult systems are not creative. They all use the same basic blueprint.
We've noticed that, yes. Yes.
Yeah. So there's just similar things. Like there's like one leader in this situation. It was my father, and everything kind of funneled through him and his approval. And that was another tenet of this Christian Patriarchy Movement of it was just basically training fathers how to have their own family cult. And so there's not really like a central leader of the Christian Patriarchy Movement. There are a few people who were leading it, but it's just basically fathers get to be the head of their own little family cult.
Basically, we're looking at the correlation between the Christian
That and
Patriarchy
other
Movement
cults.
and as a high control group, and what are the parallels?
Yeah.
Other than everything.
Everything. Central leader using a higher power or like a sacred text to reinforce the control, saying things like this is for your good, getting you to deny your own emotions and your own intuition for the sake of the collective, which in this case was the family. Those are some of the parallels that I see, the classic like controlling behavior, controlling thoughts, controlling your emotions, all of the just high control of literally everything. I would add like a body control because I feel like that's something that I don't see mentioned a lot, but just like that physical control of like what you're wearing and like what you eat and how you exercise and like basically how you use your body. A lot of that kind of control happening there too. So those are just some of the, basic tenets that overlap with all of the other fun cults that are out there.
Well, it really, when you think about it, it really is all about body control. All the other things are precursors to just getting you to physically do exactly what they want you to do, which is basically prison.
Yeah. Yeah, like the body control could be like the umbrella for all of the other types of control. Yeah. Turn you into a little robot, basically.
Speaking of which, tangent and yet not, are you able to watch Handmaid's Tale, or do you find it too triggering?
I watched the first season with roommates when I was living in DC, and then I tried to watch the second season by myself. I needed companionship. That's a show you need companionship for, so I just didn't keep going because I was like, this is something I need support for this. It's way too real. It's way too real.
It's very scary. And I'm obviously didn't grow up where you did. Grew up in a different cult experience, but I had to stop watching just because I think I was pregnant with Ace. When the third, I think it was the third season I stopped at. I stopped at some point, and I loved it. Like, it was an amazing. Like, I thought it was so well shot and well acted, and never mind the fact that Elizabeth Moss is a Scientologist. Separate story.
Yes, separate story,
which is also crazy.
But I found that I was like, wait,
yeah,
it's bizarre, isn't it?
I feel hoodwinked.
Yes, 100%. Well, one thing I really liked about your book is sort of digging into the very specific Christian doctrine. And I want to say this because I think people might maybe stop listening because if they don't resonate with the Christian stuff. But I feel like the Christian doctrine, it's a very specific version of, like you said, it's still the same template. But there are very specific things you learn from the Bible and in that movement that affects your belief systems so deeply. Can you tell me some of the sort of like core beliefs that even if you leave you don't just leave and be like, oh, I don't believe any of that anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even just kind of like an overlap with because the Western culture is like the foundation is Christianity. And I think people forget that. And then what we're seeing in our current political climate, the people that are in power and the people that have been put in power currently have been put in power by the people I was raised by. And like I literally went to camps that taught me how to take over the government, and go to camps and you are taught like democracy isn't even like a godly form of government. Like it's supposed to be a monarchy and the person is supposed to be led by a godly man, or the country is supposed to be led by a godly man. So just a world that just like doesn't even believe in democracy for that reason. Like just like we're not even pretending
Is that explicit?
that we believe in democracy. Like we don't.
Is that explicit when they teach that?
Yeah, I remember being told that.
So they overtly teach things to usurp the United States Constitution?
Yeah, that there are things in the
Wow.
Constitution, like it's man-made, it's not God-made, which the only thing that is God-made is the Bible, which is also man-made. Let's not forget. Yeah, they teach you that the Bible is basically written by God, inspired by God, and so you can't question the Bible. So that's a tenet of this society. If anyone with half a brain knows that there are multiple interpretations of the Bible, there are, I can't even remember the number, like 900 different denominations within Christianity, all
3,000
based
we
on
heard.
what?
3,000
We heard 3,000
when I looked
3,000.
it up. And then there
Yeah,
was
that may be
something-
globally potentially. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's something 50,000 in the history of the United States. There's a huge astronomical number that's like, even if you guys do get some traction, good luck sorting out your own differences, because it feels like it's going to be
Exactly.
you know.
And
Eat
it's
each
all
other.
Yeah.
fundamentally based in interpretations of the Bible. So the Bible's written by God, yet humanity has just a wide variety of takes on this thing, which is why the stakes are so high to be right, and that this is the right way. And so in the world that I grew up in, the community that I was in, we have the right interpretation of the Bible. And those
course.
other Christians over there, they can still be Christians, but they're not real Orthodox Christians. They're not, which that's another hallmark of cults, right? Like we are the best.
One way.
Yes, we are the best. We're the only way. Those people over there, poor them that they're not here with us doing the things that we do, because we are the only ones who are really pleasing God.
Kat, our chapter on that subject is called My Way or the Highway.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Direct Line to Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the power that comes from when we're saying God said this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's genius. It's genius. It's genius mind control. Because it's like, my father isn't saying, oh, this is me saying it. Oh, no, the Lord has spoken. I'm just a messenger for God. I'm just telling you what God told me. I'm not the one saying this. And it works. It works. Gets tendrils really deep. They train children. Children are really important in terms of just like, we're intentionally indoctrinating children, getting them really, really young, putting a lot of these belief systems into kids. So indoctrinating children is really important. Education is really important. The sect that I grew up in, like homeschooling was the most godly form of raising your kids. I remember there was one couple family, the father was a pastor and wanted the kids in public school. And the mother felt like, oh, like homeschooling is the most godly way to raise our kids, but I'm having to choose between that and like submitting to my husband who wants the kids, and like me like asking my parents, like in that situation when God wants you to homeschool your kids and also submit to your husband, which one do you choose? And my parents were just like, that's a hard one. Like it's just a tough one. Like they just like, it was like, I mean, I guess submit to your husband because that's important. I don't know. So it was just, yeah. Those are some of the fun little tidbits of that society.
I have a question. What are the numbers? Like, how many people do you think
Subscribe to this belief.
subscribe to it?
A
How
lot.
worried should you be?
Very.
Play it out, like a worst case scenario or a
Is this
scenario.
because of my Handmaid's Tale comment?
Yeah, no. Well, it's like extremism in anything. If it takes hold of any institution, it ultimately runs it into the ground, whether it be religion, extreme left, whatever. How concerned are you that it's going to, grapple these institutions or whatever, gain control and try to spread its dogma and then ultimately run into some sort of force that's going to stand up against it? And like, what are your concerns? Because ultimately, like, Christianity shows up in the way that you're talking about in my backyard. I know that I'm going to push back, and I know a lot of other people are going to push back. Like, how likely a scenario do you think that is based on what you're seeing, and like, how concerned are you? And
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's playing out on the political stage right now. And again, the people that raised me put the current people in power. They want those people in power. They'll say it's in the name of God. And it is getting pushed back, but they also succeeded in putting a lot of dangerous, harmful things in power. And they were training for this. They were sleeper agents. They were preparing for this. And it's not just the cult of the Christian patriarchy that did this. This was evangelicalism. And so the spectrum from, and this is not popular, but the spectrum from the cult of Christian patriarchy to regular good old day evangelicalism, there's not a whole lot of difference. And at least in the Christian patriarchy movement, they're very overt about it. And so you kind of know where they stand, where in evangelicalism, they're way more subtle in a lot of these teachings, but these same types of teachings and doctrines and theologies are embedded into good old everyday evangelicalism. And there are a lot of evangelicals in the US of A. A lot. They're everywhere. So yes, very concerned. But also, hopefully we have plenty of people pushing back and educating and saying this is not okay. Time will tell.
I think a big part of that is people leaving and deconstructing as they are now. And there's obviously a huge groundswell of that. And what I see in your book is not just, you can't just leave because the wiring is so pervasive and so specific. Like, I didn't even realize that you couldn't, in the dogma that you were raised with, you couldn't have your own desires.
Yeah.
Like, it's what God wants for you. Like, it's not just you're not going to call, well, not just. It's not, there's not going to college is one thing, but then not having, like, you're not allowed to have a desire for yourself. That's so fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're not allowed to have a desire, and then if you do, that's bad. Like, you're wrong. So, like,
police yourself, yeah.
Yeah, so then when you get out of it and you're trying to, like, figure out, like, what are my values? What do I think? What do I care about? What's important to me? Then you have this other layer of, like, shame coming in as you're, like, trying to do that. You don't even know how to some extent. And it's just, like, baby steps of just, like, trying to figure. Yeah, and I would say that I was having a conversation with someone about that the other day, about how that desires thing is kind of the crux of it. Like, they're just replacing your identity, which is very normal for cult spaces, with this dogma, and it works. It's very effective, and it is very hard to undo it after. Just as you said, you can't just physically leave. Physically leaving is really important. Geographic distance is really important. But then there's a whole system embedded into our nervous system that is trauma, yes, but also a very extreme belief system that does take a really long time to navigate and heal and, unravel. It's a lot of work.
And I want to get into some of the specifics around that. Before we do, I just realized I should have done this at the beginning, but can you just give us like a little recap on what is spiritual abuse and religious trauma? Just like the terms.
Yeah, brief overview. It's complex, obviously, but an overt form might be just using God and the Bible to shame, manipulate, coerce, control. And there are folks within religious systems that are doing that very overtly on purpose for self-gratification to intentionally control people. And then there's a whole lot of other people who are just doing that because that's what they believe God wants them to do. And they're just being godly people. And they're probably really decent people. So it's very complex in that way. And then religious trauma is just the result of being in a high control religious environment and having intense religious experiences. I think the term is adverse religious experiences. I think that was coined by Dr. Laura Anderson. Adverse religious experiences of maybe it's not abuse, but you're in the context of religion and something happens in that context, or there's a harmful doctrine that for one person maybe doesn't cause trauma, and then for another lands in a way that does cause trauma. A lot of that is impacted by just our personal stories and where we are in the pecking order in terms of if you're a man or a woman, child versus an adult. And so that is a result of adverse religious experiences that happen to you and like what is contained in our body. Something can be overtly abusive and then something and not results in trauma, and then sometimes it does, and that's what we carry in our bodies.
And that's great because your book, I feel, really gives practical tools with your own personal healing stories to kind of say, this is what happened to me and this is what I did to fix that.
Yeah.
Without giving it too much away, because obviously we want people to read the book, but love to give people some practical tools.
Yeah.
What's one key overall insight or practical tool that you hope readers will take away to help them heal from spiritual
For the
abuse?
healing part. No, and I was thinking about this too as we were focusing on the healing part, which I really think is really important. And I think one part of it is that with the magnitude of the damage that has been done to us, and then like for myself, multiple decades also occurring in my developmental years when I'm a teenager, when I'm a young adult, all of these things land in this level of trauma that is life-altering. And so I have prepared myself for the fact that I will probably be healing for the rest of my life. It's enough damage that will probably be ongoing. I do not believe that just because we are in a healing body, we're in a traumatized body, that we can't live a thriving life. And so that's really important to me and something that I talk about in the book. And then some of the tenets that are discussed in the book, and then also of the nonprofit that I run, Tears of Eden, which is for survivors of spiritual abuse from the evangelical community. The two tenets of that nonprofit are having language to name the experience. And then I would take it a step further of having language to name the experience, but then also being able to acknowledge the magnitude of the damage that has been caused. And like, this was a big deal and it impacted me. And so having that language, being able to acknowledge the magnitude of the damage. And then I think another part that's really, really helpful is just connecting with other people who either have been through something similar and can validate it because they've been there too, or do they just believe you and they understand that it's really, really messed up. I was driving in the car with my friend Tom the other day, and he said to me, as just kind of offhand, as we were talking, he was like, after everything that men have done to you, I am in awe that you still want to be my friend. And it was just like this moment of like, somebody gets it. Like, he didn't have a story similar to mine, but just was like, oh, like, this is a big deal. And the fact that you like are still talking to me after everything you have experienced, it was such a validating moment. And I didn't realize until that moment that I had been waiting like my whole life for a man to say that, of just like, this was really fucked up. So those are two things that are really, really important for that healing process.
I totally agree. I know our audience probably heard me tell this story a bazillion times. Sorry, Nippy, for the repetition. But I have a very strong memory of the first time I met somebody from another cult. It's from Jehovah's Witness cult. And we were on set of Cults and Extreme Beliefs for A&E. And they had us like, they didn't want us to talk to each other. They wanted us to talk to each other on camera. But like, we met in the hair and makeup chair before we went to camera.
And they were like, don't say anything. We
Yeah,
want to catch
they
it on
wanted to
TV.
be like fresh for the day. And I was sort of like, so what cult were you from? And I knew we wouldn't be able to do this on camera. So at one point I sort of pulled her into the bathroom, and this is when I still had my scar from the brand. I don't have it anymore. I've had it removed with plastic surgery. But anyway, I just, since I'm not going to show this on camera, I just want to show you this, because I feel like when people saw the brand and where it was on my body, that it just sort of heightened the understanding of what I went through, right? So I showed her, and she just looked at me and she said, I'm so sorry they did that to you. And she gave me a big hug. And I was still it makes me emotional, because people who didn't go through that kind of thing, they're like, what did you do? Like, how could you have
why did you let them do that to you?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Why didn't you just
leave?
leave?
Why did you just leave? Why did you just say no?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And I'm happy to answer those questions for the sake of education, and which is, I think, largely why we do what we do here. But in that moment, to have her understand that I would never have wanted that, and that it was something that was done to me without my consent.
Absolutely. And the level of control that had to be present for that to happen. Like, folks don't understand that piece of like,
They don't understand how your free will was manipulated.
yeah, like that you don't even have any at that point. And yeah, exactly.
This podcast wouldn't exist without our fantastic, supportive, generous patrons. Come find us over on Patreon. We're at patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty. Go there for bonus episodes, exclusive content, and the occasional Zoom with our fan favorites from our past episodes. Subscribe now and join us. That's patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. Remember, when you support our sponsors, you support our podcast.
You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to A Little Bit Culty, shall we? Also, recently, Nippy and I went to Nashville for spring break, but we connected with past guests like Evan Rachel Wood and Bethany Joy Lenz, whom we just adore. And obviously, their stories are so drastically different. Evan Rachel Wood being Cult of One survivor with Marilyn Manson, and Bethany Joy Lenz being a also Christian small Bible group survivor. Anyway, very different backgrounds. And I just felt like the level of conversation and depth. Also, Tia Lovings was just here, and we had her on our podcast. Again, she was also a repeat. And we spent time together. And I was just like, it just feels so nourishing, I guess, is the best way. And also, like, I'm just not good at small talk anymore. I'm not good at the
no.
Where are you? Where are you from?
Is that
How
why
old are
I'm
your
not good at
kids?
small talk? Is that because of trauma? Because I was like,
I think so, because it's also
I
they don't
have
get you.
any time for this.
Yeah, I don't have time for
I don't know. I mean, we've all been through something that's very real.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so to acclimate back into a culture where things aren't exactly authentic and people trade niceties and platitudes and stuff like that, it just feels like that's a drain on me even more. And it doesn't, what was it we said, this thing we read, it's like certain people's social situations fill their cup. Sometimes it drains their cup. Mm-hmm. And social situations for me just drain my cup. Like I'm not good. Mm-hmm. And when I go to pretend, I guess, I can feel it just drain me.
Yeah.
Physically, I'm just not, so I go to social situations to seek out intimate conversations.
Do you have the same experience that like Sarah was talking about when you're around other survivors and getting a chance to have those conversations of connecting?
No, I don't mind that because I feel like you're talking to the real person, right? And so for me, the inauthenticity, I don't talk to people who they pretend they are. I talk to them who they really are. And so I don't really accommodate the persona that they are putting out as much unless it's like a transactional relationship, but I don't need to, but I really don't have the energy for it. It's more self-protective than it is being mean and aloof.
But right? He comes off as mean and aloof. I come
off as that. Well, it's not mean. I just come off as aloof.
I know, I do too.
Yeah. Also, it's work for me. And social situations shouldn't be work. They should be fun. Yeah. So, there's certain things that's why people drink and do drugs and stuff like that, because they have that, and that's a coping mechanism, and I don't do that. But ultimately, I have enough skills and personality to kind of be in a situation and make it okay, but it caters to my weakness.
Yeah. And I think for us survivors too, we also are responding to the social pressure of like, this is how you're supposed to behave in public in these social situations, and this is how you're supposed to talk, and this is how you're supposed to interact. And so these rules, these arbitrary rules of society that somebody invented at some point, like we react to those, I think, because they feel controlling and confining. Yeah,
that's a really good point. Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to live with the consequences of not following those rules.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we're just like, it's not worth it.
It's for me, it's my own self-preservation. It's not me being mean or...
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I told that story about that Mark Marone, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Never read it.
You.
No.
It should be a pamphlet. It's a book. I read it over COVID. And it's about this guy's, subtle art of not giving a fuck. And essentially, one thing that stuck with me is when he was doing like a trip through Russia, and he was on the dating apps, and he went on some dates with some Russian women, and he found them very off-putting because they were super direct and like not like feminine to his liking. And he asked the professor, and the professor said, well, think about it. Those women live in a culture where they need to know who their friends are right away because men are very blunt and and you're used to women in a Western culture that put on niceties, and it's rewarded in our culture. The kind of sometimes, I don't want to say superficial, but just like performance of like what women do in Western culture as opposed to, the Eastern Bloc. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's a little different, and it's
Absolutely
less transactional. And his explanation was these women need to know right away if they can trust you. So they're more direct and blunt. And I thought that was an interesting explanation.
Yeah, and probably carries over to survivor culture of just like, I don't have time to play games.
I can't play that currency anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you explain how growing up in a high control environment might wire someone's brain differently, and what steps can survivors take to rewire those patterns?
A big part of healing trauma is reconnecting with your voice and reconnecting with your intuition and reconnecting with who you really are. But when you grow up in the environment, like you never got a chance to develop it. So you don't have like a baseline level to return back to, which can be really frustrating. And you do I feel this way. I know a lot of other survivors feel this way, of just like feeling like you had years of your life stolen, which is exactly what happened. And you never really got to have like a carefree childhood or get to try things in a safe way with supportive people who were just cheering you on. Or there was always a rule, there was always a standard, there was always an expectation, there was always hoops you had to jump through. And then just as someone who has done it, had to form an identity of my own afterwards as an adult. And sometimes you go through like an adult adolescence of just like, I want to party. I want to have sex with a bunch of people. Like all of the things that people get to kind of experiment with in a safe environment as adolescents and teenagers. We didn't get an opportunity. I didn't get an opportunity to do that. Like I had to be an adult very young, and I had all of these expectations on me and how I was supposed to dress and how I was supposed to behave and what kind of job I was allowed to have and what my future was going to look like. There wasn't a lot of guessing or opportunities to really decide like, who am I and what do I want to do? And so there is a lot of experimenting in adulthood. And I think for myself, just like giving myself permission to do that. And I went on, when I lived in Los Angeles, I lived in Los Angeles for 4 years, and I had a goal to like go on 100 dates. And I didn't get to that number, but it was just kind of like, basically my own version of like speed dating. Like I am not trying to find the one. That was a big deal in the Christian community of like finding the one that the Lord has ordained for you to marry. And so intentionally going on all of these days where I'm just having fun, and my purpose is not to find a life partner, to just kind of like exposure therapy, reshape, rewire that belief system that I needed to have like one person, and that God had picked that person for me, and that at some point in time God was going to magically, mystically reveal that person to me. So yeah, just kind of like just trying things out. And a lot of women go through a divorce after like being in high control religion, getting married, realizing they're in an abusive relationship. And then a lot of experimenting sexually. And so I basically like tell them when I see that coming for people, I'm just like, get the HPV vaccination, use condoms, like just like telling people just like basic, just like sexual health stuff that you don't have to worry about when you are not allowed to have sex until you get married. And just like figuring things out and giving yourself permission to figure things out. What do I like? What do I enjoy? And even just like figuring out what is the sign that I enjoy something. Like that's even hard of like, is this fear or is this excitement? They feel very similar.
They're similar.
Like fear and excitement feel very similar. And if I'm scared and also excited at the same time, is this something that I can still do even though I'm scared to do it? And yeah, just like a lot of stumbling and making mistakes that we didn't get to do when we were kids, and that it's okay. And even just the sheer idea of making mistakes, we're not allowed to make mistakes. Or if you did, like the stakes for making mistakes were really, really high. So even like making a mistake can be formative in that like, oh, I can make a mistake and then life can be fine. Like I'm fine. God's not striking me down because I did this thing or because I tried this and it didn't work out.
That's a good example. And I'm remembering some things from your book, but it's just safe to say that you have to kind of like take each one of the tenets of the belief system and then do something to counter it. Like even just the belief system, and wasn't raised obviously in your belief system, but I was also have sort of Western ideal of finding a partner and that being with a partner is better. I'm not leaving you, babe. I'm really happy with you. But just you saying that like having a thriving unpartnered life is a topic that you're passionate about and helping survivors like feel less pressure. They don't have to conform to traditional expectations. And embracing independence can be really beautiful.
Yeah, of the extremes that I see kind of trickling into our life, there's extremes from the left that have come into our life, and the extremes from the right are this notion that people need to get together, restore the nuclear family, have more babies. Like there's a rhetoric that's kind of seeping into,
regardless
culture,
of whether you're religious or not.
Regardless of your religion, what's inspired by religion, right? Because they go, this is what our country was founded on, and we need to get back to this.
The values.
Yeah, which is just bullshit, really. I mean,
depending on your values. I mean, there could be people who believe that aren't religious, but
I'm just saying,
figure out where it comes from.
That doesn't
or that's
cause
a really
the
personal.
good thing.
Yeah,
It's personal, exactly. And that doesn't necessarily cause a thriving society.
Exactly.
Right? And they're saying it does, and we need to get back to what made us great or whatever and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
But even though, like, I still want to stay married and I love my family, it was pointing out something that I hadn't considered, that you can have a thriving life. In fact, in some ways, you can have more fulfillment when you share your life with different people. Like you have your theater friend, like Nibby is not going to come to theater with me.
I'll go to theater.
But I'm going to have to drag
There's
you.
a certain theater that's just like...
I'll go to theater with you, Kat.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't do musicals.
Come in Atlanta. We'll go to the theater.
Yeah. But that's my point, is that like, I feel like our relationship is better when I don't rely on him for everything. And I have other deep relationships with, especially my girlfriends that I can talk to about things that he doesn't want to talk to me about. But it's like, where did that come from for me in the beginning, that I should have one person who's going to give me all the things?
Right. And I wonder if that is like Christian influence.
Maybe,
like, that is like that ideal situation and it being portrayed as more romantic. And
It's a lot of pressure for him.
Well, yeah. And
sorry, babe.
Yeah, and like it's
Thank
the
you, Kat,
more
for bringing that to her awareness. I feel like we're growing.
Yeah, I think it's just embedded everywhere, and it's in secular culture as well. Of just like any TV show of like, I was watching something the other day, and I was like, I really thought it was going to end with the girl just kind of like going off on her own and not ultimately ending up with someone, and at the very last minute he like comes back and they get back together, and I was like, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I was like, where are we going to have a story of the girl just being like, nope, I'm done. I'm out of here. Yeah, because that narrative is just so embedded into and pervasive in our culture. And there's a lot of literature and a lot of research and studies that were actually not designed to be monogamous. This is a whole other topic. But just that even being part of the deconstruction process of like, God designed it for this thing and you're supposed to be with one person. Like, look, God made Eve for Adam, like very specifically. And that whole narrative being so pervasive in it, and then like our physical bodies aren't actually designed for monogamy. And I don't think it's physically designed for monogamy. Then I also don't think we're just emotionally designed to just have one person. Like, we are designed for multiple relationships. We're multiple different types of relationships and having different friends for different things. Like, we're not wired as human beings to just be like with one person solely, exclusively for everything. It's not healthy.
That's not healthy. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. So that's just like a exploration that I think everyone post this environment has to do.
Well, you know, as you're talking, I'm recognizing like it does put a lot of pressure on the family unit, the secular community, and it actually puts it on the chopping block a little bit by making it so pervasive in the way that it can't be someone's choice to want one person, want a family, which is certainly possible. But now if you're making it this thing you have to do, it puts it out into the open and in a lot of ways destroys the thing that they're trying to promote in their attempts to leverage it for control. Because I think in their core, they don't really believe that.
Yeah.
They just need to believe it in order to maintain control. Maybe someday.
Well, yeah. And marriage, and this is something that I do discuss in my book, that marriage is the means of control in these religious spaces. Like, this is how they control people. This is the hierarchy, is they get a woman into marriage. She is now under the authority of a man. That man is in the church. He's under the authority of the pastor. Oh, the kids are under the authority of the family. Then we perpetuate that system. And like, we don't have to. It
destroys that system by doing that.
Well, yeah, because it's like you're just like women either have to adapt to that situation or they just get chewed up and spit out because they just can't adapt to that situation. And then there are a handful of people
I'm sure men
who really want
push
it.
back on it too, yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely does a disservice to men as well. And then there is no category for queer relationships or different gender identities at all. And like, I can imagine growing up within that context and not having this like gendered binary experience. Yeah, so harmful. The suicide level for the queer community within religious context is astronomically higher than it is in the rest or wider culture.
And it's hard enough in the rest of the wider culture.
Yeah, because you're told you're bad for this identity.
So much shame.
Yeah, so it's very convoluted, and marriage being the means of control and having this type of environment. And I'll ask myself that a lot of times, of like, have I like revolted against marriage just because of this high control environment? And I'm sure that plays a role, but I really think just like identity wise, like that was never something that I was really excited about. I was like told that I was excited about it.
Yet, maybe it's something that is down the road. Do you know what I mean? Like,
not marriage.
Our experience, yeah. Well, our experience and my experience this is once an extreme viewpoint is introduced, it automatically triggers the counter extreme.
Sure.
You know, so in
Yin
a lot
yang.
of ways, yeah, exactly. Once you introduce the extreme, the other one now, it's time to activate.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that perpetuates. And I think we were at the peak of that in our culture in the last 5 years. I think it's working itself out a little bit.
Yeah, and it is kind of the cycles.
Yeah.
Where does shame
themselves.
play into all that? Like when people get out and they've been taught, especially if you're not following the rules, like I guess being queer or gay would be the extreme. But for somebody who's just not in alignment, they still have shame. Mm-hmm. What's your roadmap out of that for people?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could just like use my story as an example. And even just like continuing just like the gender conversation of just like not fitting just the typical gendered binary for a woman, and just like knowing even as like a young kid and a teenager, I wasn't a tomboy, but I didn't have like the domestic inclination. And even now, like I don't, like I have a housekeeper and I get meal kits because I don't like to cook. Like I'm just like that type of stuff was just not like, my cup of tea. And like, this is the thing that you're like supposed to be doing to glorify the Lord. And then if you don't really like it, well, you know, the Lord doesn't want your happiness. He wants your holiness. And so you're supposed to do these things that are hard. And hard is like a sign that you're doing the right thing.
That's convenient.
Yeah. So then if something's easy or you enjoy something, and I think that's something that I have had to navigate, finding what does joy feel like? What does happiness feel like? And then navigate the shame that accompanies that, because I'm not really supposed to feel that. Or I'm definitely not supposed to feel that if I'm not doing the prescribed things that God wants me to do.
What would that have meant in that belief system? If you're feeling joy for something that's just for yourself, that's selfish, or like in the next game that would have been indulgent.
Indulgence, yeah. No, the devil
devil, of course.
Devil trying to prowl and get your soul. Your sinful nature is warring with the self that like God wants you to have. Yeah, there are a lot of ways to bypass something that you enjoy being the foundation for why you want to do it. Like, I just want to do this because I like it.
Right.
Like, that wasn't good enough ever of, it's just fun. Like, that wasn't allowed. Like, it had to have some existential meaning or something.
For more context on what brought us here, check out my memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. I narrate the audio version, and it's also available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you're supporting this podcast.
Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
You just reminded me when you said bypassing, because we've covered terms, religious trauma, spiritual abuse. What is spiritual bypassing?
Yeah. An example that I have in my book, and so, I mean, not a spoiler, it's like a paragraph long, was a woman whose father passed away, and we go to the funeral, and they're like celebrating because he's in heaven. And so there was no room for grief that this person had passed away.
Wow.
And this idea of like, rejoice always. That's a verse in the Bible, rejoice always. Again, I will say rejoice. And that was a quote that we would say in moments that were supposed to be sad. And like, someone has passed away, someone has died, someone is suffering, and a badge of honor to suffer and then also be joyful about it. That would be a very classic spiritual bypassing situation, going through something different and, oh, God has a plan. God's ways are mysterious. His ways are higher than our ways. A more subtle version would be like sharing like a situation in a church situation where I had an abusive boss, and I'm like going to people for help, and they're just basically ignoring me because this person is a pastor and you're supposed to submit to authority, and we're just like, maybe they're not directly saying that to me, but they're definitely not taking what I'm experiencing seriously. And the spiritual environment was the reason for that, because we just don't have a category for people to be bad and hurt you in church. We just don't have a space for that, and we don't know what to do with that. And so we just pretend it's not happening. Yeah, so those are just some classics from the spiritual bypassing experience, which is, yeah. And I think it happens to survivors all the time of, well, the Lord had a plan for it. Well, look at all the work that you get to do because of your story. I mean, could I trade my story and not do the work that I'm doing? Oh, yeah. Give me a magic button to like not have to go through that and not be where I am right now. Sure. Absolutely, I will take the button. Like it doesn't make it worth it that you went through abuse because God, quote unquote, redeemed it. So, yeah.
You know what? As you're talking, I'm wondering if we're guilty of this a little bit, or what the difference is between, because one of the things Nippy and I have had to say a lot, and that's been helpful for us, but I'm wondering if it's spiritual bypassing or like we've used the phrase turning a negative into a positive, like making lemonade out of lemons. You know, pain into purpose or whatever, all those things that we say. Is there a difference between that and spiritual bypassing? Like, we still grieved, I believe. We still went through those stages, but then we're like, how do we glean the wisdom out of this so that we can pay it forward? I don't know. Like, I'm just.
We have to elicit our process. I mean, if we're just skipping the necessary steps to make it a true positive, you know, you can't run from your trauma, right?
Sure. And I wonder if, like, does it become spiritual bypassing when we are ignoring the pain? Because sometimes we have to do that just to survive, right? Like, we have to say those things. We have to give ourselves the petty comments.
Pep talk. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And, like, sometimes that's just human. But, yeah, and maybe it becomes spiritual bypassing when we are ignoring the journey of what we have to do and what we have to grieve. And this happens all the time in Christian communities, of just the community having an agenda or a timeline for someone's grief. And at the point that they start saying those statements of like, God is good, and, you know, God forgives all sinners, so you should forgive your abuser, and all of the things that they do to bypass this because they've just decided, sorry, you're done grieving, or you shouldn't be feeling this way anymore. We have decided it's over. And as we know of like grief, like the cycle of grief, it doesn't just, you don't go through like one cycle of grief and then it's over. Like grief could hit you years after the event happens. And spiritual bypasses our need to be human and our human, very human emotions and very human responses to things, and just kind of placates it with Christian phrases. And yeah, it can be its own form of abuse. I think that's a very common form of abuse in Christian communities, is saying God is good and look what, well, the Lord is still good and Jesus is still on the throne, in response to people's very real trauma that they're still suffering from. It can be abusive. That is just like an everyday form of abuse that people experience within Christian communities, and does a real disservice to that healing process.
Okay, so as you're talking, I've decided you could say the same words and it could be spiritual bypassing or it could not. Depends if you've done the work to, feel all the things first.
Yeah.
So it's
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe we get to say it. I mean, we can spiritually bypass ourselves for sure, but the survivor gets to say it. I don't get to tell you, Sarah, well, just make some lemonade out of those lemons. I don't get to say that to you. If you want to say that about yourself and your own story, go for it. But I'm not going to tell you, you should do something with this. And yeah, denying the experience.
Yes. You don't want to deny the experience, which
if
reminds
it's
me
used to deny the experience.
Yeah. So that reminds me, as a parent, when our kids are going through something, it's my tendency to want to make it better versus just being with them with their big feelings and letting them know that it's okay. I'm just relating this to parents who may not be survivors of spiritual abuse, but like I think we do that to our kids too, separately, just sort of like bypass the messy parts.
And the messy parts are where the growth is.
So true, Nippy.
Thank you. That was mine. Thank you.
And
Speaking
the emotional
of platitudes,
regulation that it requires to be able to sit with someone in their pain. And so like, I know that when someone is spiritually bypassing me, it's about them and where they are, and that they don't have the emotional capacity to sit with my story. And so they're doing this because they are uncomfortable with this story. And oftentimes, like, we do it to ourselves because we're uncomfortable with where we are. And I think that the process of learning, as you were talking about, just being like able to sit with your kids in their pain, like that takes a lot of emotional, just like regulation and maturity from anyone, not just a survivor. Like that's not a survivor specific thing. Like we're uncomfortable with uncomfortable things, and not everyone has the resources to carry our stories. And that's often why they bypass.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Positive bypassing.
And obviously you've got to be very skilled in this with your nonprofit, with Tears of Eden, and sitting with people and survivors of spiritual abuse. What does that look like now, and how do you stay grounded and healthy and not get caught up in all the trauma?
Sure. Yeah, I feel like the work that we do, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this as well, is like the work we do for ourselves is vital to how we engage with others. And like work we're doing on our stories, our own stories, and I see private trauma recovery clients. Most of them are for religious trauma and spiritual abuse. And I also have a therapist, and I have a somatic therapist that I see, and I have a coach, and I am currently seeing a functional medicine doctor, and just having like this holistic approach to that, the way of life. And I think that was one thing that high control religion does, is it just creates a very cerebral, binary approach to life.
Right.
And so the gift of being able to approach life in a holistic way and involve my body, involve my emotions, involve my thoughts in everything. Art plays a huge role for me. And then it also plays a role just in my work with my clients. We also bring it into Tears of Eden as well, because most art is full-bodied. Like you are using most of your senses when you're engaging in creativity and art, and having just like an intentional way to be in our body that maybe isn't specifically trauma related can be really helpful, of just like, what does it feel like to just be in my body, but not necessarily in a therapy context where we're actually addressing the trauma and just having fun, just having a good time. Yeah. So those are just some things. I think that having friendships outside of high control religious spaces, and like, what does that look like? How to make friends, because I was conditioned that my friends needed to be people that shared my beliefs, which, as we were talking about earlier with the different denominations in Christianity and different versions of the Bible, like, it's not possible. Like, we all believe different things and have different perspectives and bring different aspects of our story. And so if you're in an environment where your friendship is supposed to be based on what you believe, then it leads to pretending because you don't all believe the same things, and suppressing, or it leads to conflict and arguments, and just having space where I'm allowed to have friends who just think differently than me, and we have different perspectives on things, and we're aligned in terms of values, but it's not belief system. Like, we all believe the same things, and it might be around like something that we enjoy, like traveling or theater or something like that, and it doesn't have to be, as we were talking about earlier, one friend filling all of the voids and all of the needs, and has to be super deep conversation every time. I have very deep conversations with my close friends all the time. We get super, super, super deep, but then we also just chill and have fun and goof off. And getting to have friendships outside of high control religion is just wonderful, beautiful, amazing. Yeah, just like, I don't know. I feel like I was robbed of relationships within the context of high control religion because of all of the rules, and the best friendships I had within that context were ones where we were kind of breaking the rules, and we were kind of like renegades and like, you know, bonded over like hiding our alcohol or whatever it was. And yeah, those things are just so helpful for the journey. And even just saying no. I'm sure that y'all have to do that a lot, of just like, I don't have the capacity for this, and I have to say no to this experience. And I'm in a season where I'm just like, I can't reply to every email I receive. I just can't. I have an auto response on my email so that people know that I got it, but I don't have the capacity to respond to every email that I receive. I guard my phone number very, very, very strictly. Who has access to me through text message, just for capacity reasons, because it's a dark space.
Yeah.
It's lovely, it's inspiring, it's wonderful, and it's also very dark and very heavy.
You're tackling something that's volatile.
Yeah, it is very volatile.
Yeah.
You said earlier you were robbed of friendships. I feel like you were robbed of a lot of things. And
Yes.
you can cut this out if you don't want. But the part of my book I wanted to bring up is that you didn't discover, we'll call it self-gratification, self-love until your 30s.
Yeah.
You had to go there, didn't you?
I did. Well, I was thinking about how much time I would have saved.
Solo sex? Is that what you're talking about? Solo sex? That's what I talked about? Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about how much time I would have saved in my teenager years had I not discovered. I discovered it at like a 13 or 14.
Oh, because it was so much a part of your life.
Yeah. I was like, that would have saved me some time. But I feel like...
Mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag. But I feel like for me, it was a stress relief.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd like study for exams, and then I'm happy that you found it, which is a perfect segue to my last question that we've been asking people recently who grew up in high control spaces and cults and all the things. What's the one thing that you do now, some private, and maybe it could be that we just spoke about, but it could be anything from like drinking a glass of wine or like some guilty pleasure that you were not allowed to do, that you do and you're like, I get to do this as much as I want by myself, whatever it may be.
Yeah, a guilty pleasure that you weren't allowed to do, that you engage in. I think it's just because we talked about that. That's on my mind. Yeah. And I don't know if other people...
Up?
Yeah.
I gotta go. It's been an hour.
Thanks, guys.
We're ending talking about sex, which is just a very human thing that we all experience, or many of us do. Yeah, and like that being one of those things, it's like, why was this bad? I don't understand why this was bad. What is bad about this? What is wrong with this? Oh, it's because it makes me happy. Oh, it's because it makes me happy, and I don't need a man to actually participate in this and also have this experience. Of course, this is dangerous. So yeah, that definitely feels like a fuck you to the system. That is also very enjoyable. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else, but I think I just got lost in that thought.
Everything's kind of secondary to that one.
It's hard to trump.
Yeah. And it is a part of my life, but it's not the only part of my life. So yeah, I do improv. I think we've talked about that before. And that it's a very like subversive community of just like our subversive community to the community that I grew up in, and just like a large gender spectrum, large sexuality spectrum, and just how that is just like so part of the community, and it's just beautiful and lovely. And then you also recognize like this is a part of who a person is. It is not the whole of who a person is, and that it's a community that we get to bring that part of ourselves into this space, and it's accepted. And the sadness that comes from that is something that people had to suppress and keep hidden, when this is just humanity, this is just human beings, is something really lovely, and also something that I'm like, I know that my former church people, church friends would just be like flabbergasted and just like completely overwhelmed by a community that's that open and affirming and accepting, which is so sad, right? Like just like affirming and accepting is like a downside in the high control religious communities, which just seems so counter to a religion that's also based on love. So.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Isn't that
that's the
super
whole
like
thing.
the opposite of what Jesus is supposed to be doing?
Supposedly.
Yeah. Hypocrisy.com.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the one thing that you hope people will get from your book to move the conversation forward?
I love this question. And when I was podcasting, I would always ask authors this question. And let me think. I'm going to have to start thinking about how I would answer that question. I honestly hope people just like walk away. It's a dark book, but I tried to put a lot of just like humor into it, because I don't usually like approach things like full on seriousness. And I put some art in it. And I just hope folks walk away with just a desire to connect with their own intuition and find out like what is important to you and live from a place of your values. And we have to deconstruct these things that are embedded into our system to get to that place. But I hope it's just inspiring for people to be able to like, you can create a life on your own terms that isn't dictated by this harmful form of religion. Live your best life.
Yes. And I really do think, like, as somebody who wasn't raised in any real religious structure, I still found it helpful. I still found it
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing
really,
that.
Really beneficial.
Yes.
And I think this is a good time to read the blurb that I wrote for the back.
Yes.
So people know my endorsement, which is Katherine Spearing's 1,000 Tiny Paper Cuts is a deeply personal, unflinching look at spiritual abuse's hidden wounds. With practical wisdom and raw honesty, it's an essential resource for survivors seeking healing and empowerment. This book is vital for anyone reclaiming their voice. I think that's true.
Yeah, Sarah.
Obviously, people who grew up in your world will get more of it or resonate deeper, but I think that anybody could, because there are belief systems that need to be evaluated to get your voice back, reclaim your autonomy, figure out who you are, which kind of is a part of being an adult, even if you weren't raised in a cult.
Yeah, just being a grown-up, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Your late teens, early 20s phase. Yeah.
Which is also when they get you into other cults. So
It's true.
Well, it's
yeah.
when you tell your parents that you already know everything.
Yeah.
You missed that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate you sharing that. And I was very excited to have your endorsement because you don't come from the religious space of just like, is this something that can resonate with people who have experienced this kind of high control religion outside it? I wrote it very specifically, intentionally for the evangelical community, but the reality, as we already discussed, these patterns exist everywhere, and any high control religious space is going to have a lot of these same patterns. And it is going to be something that I think folks outside of the evangelical space can resonate with. So I really appreciate you reading it and having me on the pod and writing an endorsement. Really appreciate it. And I'm very excited about your book.
Thank you. We're really excited too. It's a labor of love. And
The finish line is the hardest part.
yeah.
Remind me the title. I'm sure you're putting this in your intro, but
Yes, it's a little bit culty, Navigating Cults, Control, and Coercion.
nice.
Which feels
Alliteration.
Yeah, it's got some alliteration, but the thing that I'm not sure is navigating, or is it a handbook for or a survival guide?
I like the handbook.
A handbook for cults, control, and coercion. We're just still battering it around.
Yeah.
But
That's
we better
awesome.
decide soon, because we have to
It's
decide
time.
soon.
It's
That's
go
a good
time.
idea.
It's go time. We got to design the
Yeah.
cover. We're going into copy editing and formatting right now.
So fun.
Ugh.
And then the real work begins of promotion.
Yeah, that's easier
Well,
for me.
That's easier for
actually.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Than writing. Well, we hope this podcast helps to get the word out about your book. And thank you so much for writing it.
I
and
appreciate it so much. And send me all of the info on your book too, because I will
for sure.
review it on Tears of Eden website.
That would be
Awesome.
great.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
If you like the show, please consider supporting us by giving us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes. Cults are commonplace now, and we're looking at them all, and every little bit helps. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah, we covered
We covered a lot.
a lot there, didn't
From
we?
improv to masturbation.
Yeah. I think it's called solo sex.
Solo sex.
Yeah.
Solo sex definitely has a better ring to
Well,
it.
you don't go solo sex. I'm going to go solo sex myself.
You could go solo sex with yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's not what the episode was about.
Really
if you
wasn't. I'm
listened to
sorry.
it.
We
No.
just,
But anyway, thank you. Thank you for Kat for sharing your story. And we highly recommend the book. Sarah wrote the blurb, in case you didn't catch that.
very proud of my blurb.
And our improv is done here.
Clearly, Nippy and I need to get ourselves into some improv classes. I'm also going to start doing some of the exercises she recommended in her book for reclaiming my autonomy with solo sex. No, just kidding. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
I knew that was coming.
I couldn't resist.
I saw the wheels turning there.
I couldn't resist.
That's good. That's cute.
No, I was inspired by her book, and I hope others are too, for all the reasons,
Yeah, of course.
not just that one.
Okay.
Till next time.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with Amphibian Media. Our co-creator is Jess Temple-Tardy, audio engineering by Red Cayman Studios, and our writing and research is done by Emma Deal and Kristen Reeder. Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslin.